The package came to my porch by mistake, but the voice inside it knew the exact sentence I had crossed out on a city inspection form 17 years earlier. I was 67 when it arrived, retired from the St. Louis building department, and living in a quiet brick bungalow in Maplewood. The box was brown, soft at the corners, with my address written correctly and the name wrong. Mr. Elias Porter. I did not know any Elias Porter. I set it by the door at first. Then rain started blowing under the awning, and I brought it inside because I was raised to protect other people's mail even when other people made it difficult. The return address was a closed copy shop downtown. Inside was a small tape recorder, the kind reporters used before phones became everything. Gray plastic, one cracked button, a cassette already loaded. Taped to the back was a note for the inspector who said the stairs were sound. My hands went cold. I had said that once, not out loud, on paper. The building was the Marlowe Arms, an old apartment house near Cherokee Street. I inspected it in 2006 after a tenant complained about a back stairwell. I wrote that the stairs needed repair but were not an immediate hazard. 3 weeks later, a woman named Celia Brand fell on those stairs and broke her hip. She died before Christmas. For years, I told myself inspections were never perfect. A man can only report what he sees. Then I pressed play. An elderly woman's voice came through the speaker, thin and steady. "Mr. Whitaker, if this reached you, then Elias did what I asked. Please do not trust your first memory of that stairwell. You missed something, but not what you think. My name is Paul Whitaker. For 31 years, I inspected buildings of the city. Not glamorous work. Roof drains, porch railings, boiler rooms, fire doors that stuck because somebody painted over the hinges. I learned that buildings reveal people. Landlords lie with fresh paint. Tenants hide damage because they are scared of rent increases. Everybody wants safety until safety costs money. The Marlowe Arms was a tired 4-story building with tile floors and mailboxes dented by half a century of elbows. The owner, Donald Meeks, always wore a tie too bright for the room and smiled like he was calculating interest. Celia Brand lived in 3C. She was 78 then, retired seamstress. Widow, she had a laugh like a cough and kept peppermint candies in her coat pocket. I met her only twice, but I remembered her because she thanked me for coming before she complained. "The back stairs dip on the 3rd landing," she told me. "Not much. Enough to make a body careful." I checked them. They were old, yes. Uneven, yes. But they held my weight. The handrail was tight. I marked them for repair within 30 days. Meek stood beside me with his clipboard. "See," he said to Celia. "Nothing to panic over." She looked at me. "You are sure?" I said, "They need work, but they are not failing today." That sentence followed me longer than I admitted. After Celia fell, her nephew came to my office. He did not shout. That made it worse. "You gave him time," he said. I had no good answer. Now, 17 years later, Celia's voice was in my kitchen saying I had missed something. The tape clicked and continued. The stairs did not fail under me. Someone changed the light. I leaned closer. "If you want the truth, start with a bulb in the coffee can." The tape stopped after that. I turned the recorder over like it might offer further instructions out of pity. It did not. The coffee can meant nothing until I remembered the Marlowe's basement. Every old building had one corner like it. Cracked shelves, abandoned paint, rags stiff with age, coffee cans full of screws and washers, because no maintenance man in America throws away hardware. The Marlowe Arms still stood, though barely. It had been bought by a nonprofit and turned into senior housing. I drove there the next morning in a cold rain that made the streets shine black. The lobby smelled different. Cleaner. Less dust. A young woman at the front desk listened while I explained that I used to inspect the building. "I am not here officially," I said. She looked at my gray hair and old raincoat. I figured. Her name was Tasha, and she called a maintenance supervisor a man named Ben Sorrell. Ben had arms like fence posts and the patient expression of someone who had heard every version of "It used to be different." "The basement still have old storage?" I asked. "More than we want." The basement was brighter now, but the back room remained a graveyard of useful things. Ben found the coffee cans on a shelf near the old boiler. The third can held wire nuts, 2 switch plates, a bent screwdriver, and a light bulb wrapped in newspaper. On the newspaper someone had written, "Not burned out." The bulb looked ordinary. Clouded glass, brass base, 40 watts. Ben held it up. Why keep a dead bulb? Maybe because it was not dead. He screwed it into a work lamp. It flickered once and came on. The stair light above the third-floor landing had been reported burned out the night Celia fell. Meeks claimed his maintenance boy replaced it the next morning. But the old bulb still worked, then darkness had not been an accident. Tucked under the bulb was a receipt from a hardware store. 2 items, black electrical tape, 1 replacement stair tread, paid cash, date, the day before Celia fell. The receipt led me to a hardware store that no longer existed. That is how most trails look after 17 years. Empty storefronts, new names, people telling you the old owner moved to Florida or died or married someone in Nebraska. But the receipt had a clerk number, and the county business records listed the store manager as Lorraine Phelps. She was living in a retirement community in Fenton, and when I called, she remembered the Marlowe Arms right away. "Awful place," she said. "Good bones, bad owner." I drove out that afternoon. Lorraine met me in the common room, where 3 women were working a puzzle of covered bridges. She was small, direct, and wore a cardigan with birds on it. I showed her the receipt. She tapped the clerk number. That was mine. "Do you remember who bought these?" "Not the name. I remember the boy." "What boy?" "Maintenance kid from the Marlowe. Elias." The name on the package. Elias Porter? That sounds right. Skinny thing. Always paid cash. Always looked like he expected trouble. What did he need a stair tread for? She frowned. He said he was fixing something before an inspector came back. I told him 1 tread would not fix a rotten staircase. He said it was not for the staircase. Then what? Lorraine leaned back. He said it was for a window. That made no sense. Then she added, he came back 2 days later with a woman, older woman, sharp eyes. She asked if I would remember the receipt if somebody asked. I said I remember most things people wish I would not. Celia? Maybe. She bought a notebook that day. Blue cover. The tape recorder had given me a bulb. The bulb gave me a receipt. The receipt gave me Elias. And now Elias had a notebook. I asked Lorraine if she knew what happened to him. She shook her head. But that woman was protecting him. I could tell. People protect with their bodies before they use words. Finding Elias Porter took longer. He was not in city directories. No social media I could identify. No phone listing. The package had been mailed from a closed copy shop, but the postal label was recent. Somebody had handled it. Tasha at the Marlowe found an old tenant bulletin from 2006 in a file cabinet. At the bottom, under maintenance emergencies, was a handwritten number for Elias Porter. Disconnected. Beside it, someone had written another name, Sister Angela. That led me to St. Bridget's Outreach, a Catholic charity that had once served meals 2 blocks from Marlowe. Sister Angela was gone, but the woman who ran the place now, Nora, remembered the name Elias Porter. He used our address for mail for a while, she said. Do you know where he went? People do not always want to be found. I understand. Do you? Fair question. I told her about the tape recorder, Celia, the stairs, and my inspection. I did not make myself sound better than I was. Nora listened, then left me in a small office with a wall calendar showing a mountain lake. When she returned, she carried a blue notebook. Sister Angela kept this in a locked drawer, she said. There's a note saying it goes to Mr. Whitaker if he ever comes asking without a lawyer. That is oddly specific. People in hard situations become specific. The notebook belonged to Celia. The first pages were ordinary lists. Rent paid, medicine, groceries. Then the entries changed. Meeks showing units to men in suits. Elias's basement wall opened. Did not let Paul Whitaker sign off too early. I sat very still. She knew my name before we met. On the next page, Celia had drawn the back stairwell and marked the third landing. Under it she wrote, The danger is not the stairs. It is what he is hiding behind them. I had inspected the stairs. I had not inspected the wall beside them. That was my first hard lesson all over again. You find what you are sent to find. You miss what no one names. The Marlowe's third-floor landing had a service panel, painted the same beige as the wall. Ben helped me pry it open. Behind it was empty space where old plumbing had once run. Nothing dramatic. Dust. Dead wires. A gap down to the second floor. But at the bottom, caught on a nail, was a strip of blue cloth. Ben fetched a flashlight. The cloth was wrapped around a stack of papers in a plastic sleeve. The papers were brittle but readable. Lease termination notices. All prepared for elderly tenants in rent-controlled units. Celia Brand, Ruth Kepler, Amos Dean, June Bell. Meeks had planned to force them out, renovate, and raise rents before the nonprofit ever made an offer. That was ugly but not mysterious enough. Then I found the last page. A contractor's estimate for converting the back stairwell into private access for luxury units. The third-floor landing wall would be opened, the old service space removed. The tenants' complaints about stairs had given Meeks a reason to close that stairwell and start work. Celia had figured it out. I went back to her notebook. Elias says Meeks told him to make stairs look worse, then better. Create emergency, control repair. That line changed everything. Elias had bought the tread and tape because Meeks ordered him to stage damage before my follow-up inspection. Celia found out the working bulb had been removed to make the landing dark. I thought I had caused her fall by underestimating a hazard. The first twist was that Celia had stepped into a setup meant to manipulate my report, not a simple maintenance failure. And Elias, the boy everyone would blame, had kept the proof. Nora found Elias through an old outreach contact. He was living in southern Illinois, running a small appliance repair shop out of a former gas station. I drove there on a gray Thursday with Celia's notebook on the passenger seat and the tape recorder beside it. Elias was not a boy anymore. He was in his late 30s, narrow-faced, with careful hands and a streak of white in his hair. When I introduced myself, he looked toward the open garage door as if measuring escape. "I wonder when that package would land," he said. "You sent it?" He wiped his hands on a towel. "Celia told me to. After she died, I got scared and mailed it to myself first. Then I moved. Then I kept moving. Why now? Sister Angela died last year. She was the last person who knew the whole thing. I figured if I waited any longer, I would become the kind of man who lets truth rot." We sat in 2 folding chairs near a refrigerator with its back panel removed. Elias told me Meeks hired him when he was 19. Paid cash. Let him sleep in an empty storage room some nights. That kind of help can become a leash before a person notices. He told me to loosen one stair tread. Elias said, "Not enough to hurt anybody. Just enough that when you came back, he could call it urgent structural deterioration and start renovations." "Did you do it?" He looked at his hands. "I started to." That answer took more courage than denial. Celia caught me. She did not yell. She brought me coffee and said, "Young man, you are being used by someone too lazy to do his own sin." Despite myself, I smiled. That sounded like her. She made me put it back. We kept the receipt, the bulb, everything. Then she went to meet Meeks that night. At the stairs, Elias nodded. She said she was going to make him put in writing that no one would be evicted. Elias's voice shook for the first time. She fell because I turned off the light. I waited. Meeks told me to. Said no one would use the back stairs at night anyway. I did it before Celia came down. I did not know she was meeting him. Did Meeks push her? No. He was in the lobby. I saw him. She missed the first step in the dark. There it was. No villain with hands on her back. No clean blame. Just a chain of small cowardly choices. One of them made by a frightened kid. One by a greedy owner. One by an inspector who saw too little and wrote too confidently. What happened after? I asked. Celia woke up in a hospital and told me not to run. She said evidence matters more than guilt. But Meeks said if I talked, he would tell everyone I rigged the stairs. So you stayed quiet. I stayed quiet until the nonprofit bought the building. Celia made me give them copies anonymously. That is how the tenants kept their apartments. I stared at him. What copies? Elias reached under the counter and took out a folder. Inside were letters from a nonprofit attorney, thanking an unnamed source for documentation, proving planned displacement and unsafe manipulation of repairs. Because of that proof, the sale had included tenant protections. The second twist was not that Celia had died exposing Meeks. It was that she lived long enough to use the evidence, forgive Elias, and save the remaining tenants without ever letting anyone know how. She made me promise not to tell while Meeks could hurt people, Elias said. Then later, I thought telling would only reopen things. He slid the tape recorder toward me. She recorded that for you because she said you look like a man who might confuse responsibility with damnation. I looked down at the cracked recorder. She was generous. She was stubborn. Elias said, same thing sometimes. Elias came with me to the Marlowe 2 weeks later. The building had a new ramp, bright hallways, and flower boxes on the third-floor landing where the old service panel used to be. Tasha let us use the community room. Nora came too, carrying Celia's blue notebook in both hands. We did not hold a ceremony. Celia would have hated that. We sat with 4 tenants who had known her, drank weak coffee, and listened to the tape from the beginning. When Celia's voice filled the room, nobody moved. At the end, she said, Paul Whitaker, you were not wrong to trust what held your weight. You were wrong to think that was the only test. A building is not safe because the stairs stand. It is safe because people inside are not being pushed toward the edge. I looked at the floor. Elias sat beside me, breathing through his mouth like a man trying not to break in public. Afterward, an old tenant named Amos touched Elias's shoulder. You the one sent those papers? Elias did not answer. Amos nodded anyway. Then I stayed in my home because of you. Elias covered his face with one hand. That was the ending Celia had wanted. I think, not punishment, not absolution. Recognition placed carefully where shame had been sitting too long. I kept the tape recorder. Elias kept the notebook. The Marlowe framed a copy of Celia's last note and hung it by the back stairs. Most people pass without reading it. Some stop. That is enough. I still think about inspections. Not the city kind. The human kind. How quickly I once believed a sign form could tell me what was true. How many dangers hide outside the box we are assigned to check. How often people wait for someone official to notice what they have been living with all along. Celia Brand noticed. A frightened young maintenance man noticed. Eventually, even I did. Late is not the same as never. I hold on to that.